Passion for Scrapping writes, upon stepping back into the scrapbooking world, I found myself buying a ton of journaling cards. I've yet to use them. I looked to the gallery for inspiration, but found them only used for Project Life. Does anyone use them for regular scrapbooking pages? Glitter Girl, can you help Passion for Scrapping put pen to paper?
Of course I can. Today I've gathered lots of different journaling card pieces, some that come as individual cards like these from Ellie Studio, some that come as cut apart cards like this one from a 6x6 paper pad from Simple Stories, and then some that come as full 12x12 sheets like these two different options from the new Amy Tangerine Yes Please collection. So I'm going to put together all sorts of different journaling blocks and also some labels, because journaling blocks are kind of a large version of a label, so they work really well together. And we know that we can write on journaling cards, obviously. Today I'm going to try and show you 3 different ways, in addition to just writing on them, that you can use them on any layout. And then you might choose to put them all on the same layout like I'm going to do today, or you might choose to spread those techniques across different pages and have something that has a little less embellishment on each page. Completely up to you and really easy to customize to your style. Today I'm starting with this 12x12 background sheet, which is new in the store. It's from the Pink Lemonade collection by Lawn Fawn. There are 2 new paper collections by Lawn Fawn in the store, so I'm using this lovely green diagonal chevron and also one of their 6x6 papers. This one with the turquoise background and lots of different arrows. And that's from the Daphne's Closet collection, which has lots of spring patterns. And the 2 collections do go very well together. One has a little bit more of the blue and green, the other one has a little bit more pink in the mix. So depending on what you prefer in your pages, you've got those options. I'm also using some 6x6 from Simple Stories, so this one with all the journaling cards that I can cut out, and then also a polka dot, which is from the Snap color pad that has a large and a small polka dot, a diagonal stripe, and a chevron in every different color. So lots and lots. And all those patterns also come in 12x12. And then at the back of the 6x6 here, you also get some multicolored options that include some journaling cards and some smaller diagonal pieces to cut apart and some with lines and dates. Okay, so I'm going to get this cut to fit and then start cutting apart a variety of different journaling card options. So I have Ellie Studio and also some round and small pieces, not so much big journaling cards, from Evilicious, and then my Amy Tangerine Yes Please. So I'm going to get all these different pieces cut apart so that I can move them across the page. I do tend to take pieces like that and cut them apart to keep in my stash, because I find it easier if I just have them all in a bowl of die cuts, because once I start cutting a few of these, the page gets a little bit difficult to store it upright, and I'd rather have it in smaller pieces and be able to see what's there and not worry about damaging it, versus if I have pieces cut out and then it gets all twisted and I might bend the one that I want to use. So that's just what works for me. So I'm going to get all those different pieces cut out so that I can start moving them across my page. Once they're cut out, I like to take all my journaling cards and stack them up so that I have things that are the same size, all in groups that I can easily see what size is there. And I sometimes fan them out a little bit so I can get an idea of what color I have on hand. And then that gives me just a little bit of a visual cue as I'm putting together my layout to look over to a really limited amount of things and say, okay, I have a lot of choice, but this is the one that will work best here. So that works really well for me. And then I take all the pieces that are odd size and I try to spread them out so that I can see what kind of variety I have in terms of color, size, and shape. Then today I have two 4x6 photos that I'm going to be working with, and I have that 12x12 and two 6x6s. And I'm going to start by piecing together a background with the photos and these two boxes. I'm going to keep one 6x6 a whole piece, and the other one I'm going to cheat a bit. And I'm just going to go to the bottom edge and I'm going to cut it. It doesn't matter that it's just cut with scissors because it's all going to be covered up and you won't see that gap, but it does mean that I can lengthen this piece of paper in the design and make it look like this is a larger piece of paper without having to use a 12x12, because I've already used up my red polka dot 12x12 from the same collection. So, or if you didn't have a red polka dot on hand, but you had whatever pattern you wanted in the smaller size, you can always make it work. So I'm just going to line it up like that, and then take my second pattern and block it off over to the side. Then as I build my layout on top, I just know I need to fill this gap so that you don't see where that piece of paper was cut apart. I have my two photos, and this is where I'm going to start with my journaling cards. One of the things that's really useful to use journaling cards in your design is the size. So a 4x6 journaling card is the same size as a 4x6 print. That means that I find them really useful because it means they will go together in the same sort of way. So say these two were portraits, instead of having 3 photos, I can have 2 photos and a journaling card. And in fact, Glitter Girl's Adventures have taken her there before, so I'll link you up underneath in case that's one that you would like to check out. But there are also other geometric combinations that will work really well because they're the same size or similar sizes. So in this case, I have one portrait 4x6 card, 2 landscape 4x6 photos, but I also have cards that are the other height. So cards that are 3x4, designed for 3x4 pockets in a divided page protector, will line up with a landscape photo to be the same height. Now this one has a tab, so it's slightly different at the top, but this means that I can start to put things together in a way that will work out geometrically balanced, as it were. So I can take something like this and place these two photos so that they won't be perfectly lined up. They'll be offset. And then I can mix in something like this so that I have my journaling cards creating a bit of a grid. And basically I can keep moving the arrangement around until I find a spot that I really like. And it might mean that I bring it all in a bit and have a more narrow box like this, or I spread the pieces out. And it's just completely up to what style and design you want to have with how much it's either pushed together or spread apart. But because these different cards are those same sizes as the divided pockets, it means that they work really, really well with 4x6 prints. So I'm going to have a little look at different ways that I could put those two together and make sure all my lines are nice and lined up with those pattern papers that I've already put down. And then that will give me a nice place to start and the first use of my journaling cards. Now, because this 3x4 card has a little bit of empty space from the tab at the top, I just added a strip of tape underneath there so that you can't see through to the green, because of course that's in that gap that I need to cover from my red pattern paper. And I quite like that little challenge of having to find something then that will add in there and then balance it off somewhere else on the page. So I've just repeated that same tape on the other side at the bottom of the larger journaling card. But if you didn't cheat with this pattern paper, you would have the red behind here, and perhaps you wouldn't want to add something extra. You just let the red show behind. So there are lots of different options there, just depending on what you want to accomplish with your little mix of photos and journaling cards. Now I found then that my eye went to this space over here. It does mean that I have now covered up an awful lot of this 6x6 of the blue arrow paper, and perhaps I should have planned that a little bit better if I wanted to include more of that paper in the design. But in this case I'm really drawn to adding a little bit of something else here that will bring in the red from this side of the page and then also repeat the yellow from this tab over to here. So I'm going to add some smaller journaling spots. This one is from the Simple Stories 6x6 paper pad, but the same designs come in 12x12 sheets, which creates a larger pattern, of course. And then this little one from Embellish. Now I have a good balance for my page. It's a little different way for me to use 4x6 prints because I tend to put them right next to each other. So this is the same sort of idea. They're still touching here in the middle, but I've just separated the images out a little bit by using the journaling cards as paper elements. But time to find a second way to use journaling cards other than just as journaling cards, just for writing on. So I'm going to go to some of my smaller pieces here and spread them out so that I can see what I have, and then choose a few to make a little embellishment area. So have a look at what would be best and which ones will and won't fit. Well, this was really close to home, so I'm not going to use the one with an airplane, but I like the idea of using the one that's real life. And so I'll maybe pick a couple more that will coordinate well with that. And these are all landscapes, so maybe I'll take out the portrait options here and use this one or this one. I think I'll go with this one here. So that gives me 3 journaling cards to start using as an embellishment, and I can look at different places on the layout for where I want to include them. So I could run them in a line at the top of the page. If I was only using one photo, I could make a grid of 9 and just cut them apart, but then just separate them out a little bit, add just a little bit of embellishment over the top so they don't look so flat. So things like maybe put a white gem over the flash bulb on the camera design, or add a little bit of stitching or a brad or a piece of actual ribbon in with the paper ribbons. But I think because I've used some smaller cards that are similar to this down here, I'm thinking up here at the top would be a good spot to start this embellishment. With those small journaling pieces, and these are a bit more just little motifs rather than having space for journaling, but this one does. I just want to add a little something to each of them. So I added a gem here that's just an adhesive doodlebug gem, and then repeated that same tape that I used elsewhere on the page up to this point. And I'm going to embellish it a little bit more with a stick pin. This is one of the decorative pins from the collectible collection by My Mind's Eye. And here's how I use them. I punch one hole with my paper piercer so that I can then secure the pin on the other side of the layout. Now, you certainly can do 2 and bring the tip of the pin back to the front, but I tend to like it tucked away on the back just so that it can't pierce the page protector or anything like that. And then I cover the back with tape to keep it in place and make sure that it's not going to stab the other layout that will be next to it in that page protector. And come back to the front, and I'm going to use a little bit of baker's twine to add a little tied detail here across the top. And this is one of the Lawn Fawn baker's twines. They are a bit heavier twine than the ones that are more like a thread. So this it's really nice and sturdy for cards, or if you want to use it on the outside of a project, and of course it works perfectly well inside the page protector too. But if you've used baker's twine and really wish that it was a little bit heavier, then you might want to check out these new colors from Lawn Fawn that are in the store. Okay, so there's my detail for 2 of those, and I think I will go ahead and just tack these into place with just a couple little dots of adhesive. That should work. And that gives me this card left. And one of the other things that I do when I'm using lots of different cards is look for the space that's left in a design and see what else fits. So right now I have an awful lot of rectangles going on this page. It would be great to have something to balance that off, a round element. So I have some little badges here. These are also from embellish, so I can see by the clear background, I can see if there's one that would be a good match and move it around. Now the size is a good match, so I just need to look to see if there's one that would work well with the theme. And I think if I use this orange one, then that will match the @ symbol that's here, and maybe that the combination of two @ symbols up here is telling me that's where I should record the name of this location. So I do like that her badges, these just tear apart, so you can move them around individually, but this is what I'm looking for, something that will fit in that space, and it is a perfect match there to that little spot, so I don't even have to add anything else to make it fit the space. It's just a good match. So then perhaps I'll add a label or something here, or maybe I'll write the name in here, but I think I'll leave that for just a minute so that I make sure I get everything in the place where I want it on the page. Around about this time is where I need to start deciding where my title is going to go and what writing I want to include. I know I have an idea of what story I want to go along with these seemingly random ice cream pictures, but I promise there is a reason I want them in my album, a reason that I photographed them in the first place. So I'll take a moment to figure out where all my wording should go and get my writing down onto the page, and I'll use some of these journaling boxes that I included as papers in the design to hold some of that writing. Of course, another benefit to journaling cards is that they are really easy to customize. They're a great way to use your stamps and mix them in with your journaling to make your own cards that will be unique to your pages. So I'm trying that with a few different stamps mixed in with my writing, and I've done this once on the larger card, and then I'm going to repeat it in a similar way on the smaller card. I'm starting with the Skyline stamp from the new Amy Tangerine set, and just going to stamp that in black. I did it at the top of the card this time, but for the second one I'm going to stamp it at the bottom of the card. And then I can customize that outline with whatever I would like to add to it. So I want to pick up this turquoise color that's running throughout there. So I'm going to use just a colored pencil to color it in and do the tops of the buildings a little bit darker than the bottoms of the buildings, just so it fades away to nothingness, because this stamp doesn't have a grounding line, it's just the tops of the buildings. So once I've put in a little bit of darker color at the top of each of those, then I can just lightly fill in the rest. And you can do this with any sort of way that you like to color in designs. You can do it with markers, with watercolors, with colored pencils, with inks, anything that you like. It's just the idea that you can customize and get that opportunity to remember to use your stamps, because I think as scrapbookers sometimes we really like a stamp design and we purchase it, but actually remembering to use it is a whole other challenge. Or I could be totally wrong on that and it's just me. In that case, then, you know, it's alright. Okay, so I also wanted to add a little bit of a contrasting color. I could color all the buildings different colors, but I didn't want to do anything that complex. I wanted to keep it really simple, but I wanted to add just a little finishing touch. So I just took the plastic stamp cover and added a little bit of mist. I mixed a Mr. Huey and a glimmer mist until I got a color that worked well with the other shades of yellow on my layout. And then I just used a paintbrush to come in and paint in a couple of the little windows in the design. And it doesn't need to be perfect at all, but it will dry not only with that color looking as if it were watercolored in, but also with the shimmer because I used a glimmer mist, and not just the static Mr. Huey that doesn't have the shine, but also one with shine. So that way it has a nice little pearlescent finish. It's a really small detail that you wouldn't see unless you were looking at it up close, but a nice little touch that you can add. Then I just stamped right over the top with some letter stamps. So these are new from Lawn Fawn, and the set has both uppercase and lowercase letters. And the idea here is that I can use the same ink, but where the drawings are quite, the drawing of the buildings, it's quite small lines or fine lines, as it were. And then the letter stamps are a bit heavier over the top, so it's possible to read the journal or read the stamped letters even though they're on top of that design. Now this set does give you duplicates of the letters so that if you want, you can spell it all out on your stamp block and then add it to your page and just stamp once. But what I prefer to do is to have them spaced really closely together, so I tend to just stamp one letter at a time, which is going to be far, far too boring for you to watch, so I will pause it just after I do the second letter. I'm just going to continue stamping over the top of the building. To finish today's layout, I went back to that same design concept that I used up here, and that's basically circles love squares, or rectangles in this case. It's really nice to balance out something that has lots of blockiness to the design with some elements that are round. So I had that one round element up here, and I went into that stash of different journaling tags and labels that I pulled out at the beginning and pulled out two of them that were circular. That way I could make a triangle around the design, but also just basically bring in a round element wherever there were lots of pieces that were blocky. Then I decided I could repeat this idea with the stick pin and the baker's twine, so added two of those, one to each of those areas of embellishment. And this last little piece was because I started to see how everything was a very similar tonal quality. They were all kind of medium tones plus white. So there was nothing really pale and nothing really dark, but there was a little bit of dark brown in these embellishments here. And I had this piece in with all the different pieces I'd pulled out, and I just placed it here to see what I thought, and I think it really helps ground the coloring here. It's not grounding in terms of a horizontal element, but it's something that keeps this dark brown from being the heaviest item on the page, because a heavy item at the top of the page can sometimes seem a little bit unbalanced. Now ideally I'd add another little piece that's dark brown to this area here, and I haven't found that magic piece just yet. So I thought I would pause here and show you the sort of thing I would do to try and find that final little finishing touch. And I basically go through all these different elements. Now the Amy Tangerine pieces that I had from the beginning, those are all lighter tones, so I know that's not going to be what I'm looking for. So I can take all these others. Now I didn't have another dark piece from this same pack left, but I do have pieces left from this set, because remember I pulled out all the ones that were portrait and didn't use them because I used 3 that were landscape. So I could take this one that was portrait and I'd put aside earlier. I can cut it down to a smaller size, because all I really want is a little bit of that dark brown to bring that into all 3 areas so it's nice and balanced in the tonal quality or the tonal weight of everything I've pulled out. So I can just tuck this into this little mix here and just find a spot that's going to be a good match. Just kind of move things around until they work, really. But I really just want a tiny little bit of that color to show up here because I've been able to repeat it in the other two elements. So that brings my layout to a finish today, and it's time for your challenge. This week I challenge you to put your journaling cards to use on a 12 by 12 or 8.5 by 11, whatever page size you use, but we wanted to find some more examples of using journaling cards on pages that are not in divided page protectors. So see what you can do, and if you are only working in divided page protectors, I won't kick you out of the challenge. Go ahead and join us and share your work with us in the gallery. And underneath the layout, please tell us in the description a little bit about your ideas for what to do with journaling cards. So maybe something other than balancing them with photos and stamping on them, and all sorts of things like that. Looking for different elements you can layer on top due to the space in the design. Maybe you have more ideas. I'm sure there are far more things to do than the 4 things I've covered today, but I hope you enjoy, and happy scrapping. I'll see you soon.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at 2peasinabucket.com.